Thanks for tuning in to The Rachel Hamm Show, where you'll find the inspiration, encouragement, and tools you've been craving. Be sure to hit subscribe and give this video a quick like. Now, here's Rachel.
Hi, this is The Rachel Hamm Show. I'm Rachel Hamm. This is Nikki, and we are glad to be with you today. Wow, what a crazy time. What on earth is happening with us? I mean, is Joe Biden alive? Is he dead? Cheadle has stepped down. Duh, she should have stepped down immediately. Although I have to say, don't take any comfort from her stepping down, because quite obviously she'll be replaced with a different swamp creature who has the same goal of killing Trump. So yeah, we can't take any comfort in her stepping down, and yet obviously she had to. What an interesting time to be alive. There is so much happening, and God bless Trump. So thankfully he lived the assassination attempt, lived through it. Wow, I wonder what's next. One thing's for sure, it's not been boring. That's for sure. I remember in December of 23, right before this year started, Chuck Pierce said, "We are getting ready to head into a year of unprecedented warfare." Unprecedented warfare. And that has certainly been the case, hasn't it? I can't believe how it just feels like we bounce from one crazy thing to the next. I can tell you that I'm so thankful to have a relationship with the Lord through all this, because it must be so unsettling to be alive right now if you don't know the Lord. But also, have you noticed all the people coming to know the Lord? There's all these things happening with famous people coming to know the Lord. I've been seeing one after the other. There's one crazy event after another. There's also been one famous person coming to know the Lord after another. And that's encouraging. I do really just see such a great spiritual awakening taking place. I hope you see it too. I hope you're encouraged. And even though the warfare is intense and the attacks are intense, and there's a lot going on, a lot of hard things going on, certainly there is for me personally. I see that there is for others that are in my life, really hard things. Like, just, it feels like almost everyone I know or I'm close to is going through something really hard. And I'm thankful we have each other, and I'm thankful we have the Lord. But man, it is really intense. But nonetheless, I'm doing the things that I can do. I hope you're doing the things you can do to rise above, to stay focused on the Lord, to really kind of like in the storm when Jesus, tells Peter to come to him on the water, and he's coming and he's doing great as long as he's got his eyes on the Lord. But as soon as he takes his eyes off the Lord, he starts to sink. And I feel like it's the same way for me right now. Like, I am focused on the Lord. I'm doing okay. I can have joy. I can have peace. And then I start focusing on my situation and start sinking. And so I just can't afford to not focus on the Lord, having to increase my time with the Lord, increase my fellowship with other believers, increase the time of worship and prayer. So it's interesting. It's interesting. Let's continue to pray for President Trump. We know that that was not going to be the last assassination attempt. Certainly there will be another. In fact, it's already, in the works and being planned. I had mentioned that I had been hearing political things that I was going to maybe share. And I'll share just a little bit of that, which was, quite obviously that Biden was not going to be the nominee. But what I had been hearing was the goal was for him to stay in place until after the convention, so that they could replace him with whoever they wanted without delegates cooperating. They could just put in whoever they wanted. But also, there are loopholes and things that are going to make it difficult for whoever replaces him, because they can't get on the ballot in certain places like California, which quite obviously you would need California's electoral votes. I mean, it's, so huge, and it always goes blue, supposedly. And, but the California law is such that whoever replaces Biden will not be able to be put on the ballot. So that's an interesting loophole, although obviously they're not necessarily following laws right now. So they might figure out some sort of way to get around that, or just do it even though it's illegal. I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch. I definitely think we need to get out our popcorn and kind of enjoy the movie. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I am hopeful about what's coming, even though it's so crazy but I think probably you're the same, right? Like we can see past what's actually happening to what God is doing and to the good things that are happening. And I also see people waking up more and more, the more crazy things that happen, people who are still asleep start waking up. So sometimes those crazy things have to happen in order for people to wake up. So it's good. Good things are happening amidst the hard things that are happening. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about a series of dreams that I've been having. I've been having the same dream over and over with just slight differences in it, and that always gets my attention, right? Like, why? First of all, I think if I have it repetitively, I feel like I really need to pay attention to it. Or also, sometimes it means there's something I'm not getting, like God told me and I didn't get it, so he's given it to me again. And so this was a dream that I've had that had just slight variations, but I've had it 4 times. So that's really quite interesting to me to have it 4 times. So I'm going to tell you the dream and then share what I believe it means for you and me. Okay, so the dream is that I'm with a realtor who is showing me a house for me to maybe buy. And in all of the dreams, the houses were so appealing. Like it was like, oh, I really loved the kitchen in one of the dreams. And in another dream, there was this porch that was really cool that had these beautiful like porch swings all over it and these twin beds that were hanging by ropes that you could lay on and sway on the porch. And I thought, oh, that's so neat. I would love to have that. And in one of them, there was a big living room that had solid glass windows all the way around 3 sides of the room with these gorgeous trees outside of the windows. And I was so drawn to that. And I thought, oh, I'd like to have that house because of that room. I love that glass, all the glass. And then there was another one that there were indoor, outdoor walls where the glass opens, and the inside of the house is open to the outside. And it was just really pretty. And there was water and it was so appealing. And in all of the dreams, there was something that made me really want the house. But as I would get to the end of the dream, there would be kind of this gnawing feeling, this like gut feeling of, as amazing as this house is, it's not for me. It's not what God has for me. And I knew there was a different house that he had for me, but I had to say no to this house in order to get the other house. And it was very hard to say no to each house. Each house, it was like, I want this house. This is the one I want. This is so great. But there was always something just slight that made it also where it was like, but I can tell it's not for me. And also each house had things that I didn't like, but it was like, I liked 90% of it, but there was a little bit that I didn't like. So I'd get to the end and the realtor would be applying pressure to me to buy the house in all of the dreams. And in 3 of them, I just had to say no. And they were disappointed. They expressed their disappointment in me. They really were like, you really need to buy this house. This is really a good deal. You're really missing out. There was pressure and kind of disappointment, which, never feels good when someone's disappointed in you and kind of, applying that pressure. And so it had to just end hard. Like I had to just say no and deal with it. And one of the dreams, one of the 4, I knew that there was someone else specifically who should have this house. I wanted it, but I knew I needed to say no. And I knew there was this other couple that I needed to call and tell them, I think I found a house for you. And then I went and got them and brought them back and showed them the house and they bought it. And then I had to deal with a little bit of jealousy in the dream, even though I'm the one that showed it to them and brought them to the house because I really wanted it. But I knew it was for them. It was their house. It wasn't for me. And I had to let go of it. And it was so hard. And I was leaving the house crying, just disappointed that I didn't get to have that house and yet having a peace that I knew I was doing the right thing. Okay. So as I have sat with the Lord about these dreams, like, Lord, what on earth? What did you want to say to me and to anyone? And I felt like he said that the enemy is really working to get people in the slightly wrong situations. They're not bad situations. They're just not the situations that God has for us. And the enemy is really luring and tempting us into situations that are appealing, feel good, seem kind of right, seem good enough for sure, and also appeal to our flesh. Those things that really aren't of God, but ooh, they feel so good, or oh, they're so enjoyable or tempting. And so he showed me that the enemy was working to get those of us who know God and love God and who have high callings, who have callings on our lives where there's things we're supposed to do. And if the enemy can get us just slightly off track, like if you're going this way, because where God is leading you is right here. So you got to go this way. If the enemy can just slightly just get you tilted just a little this way, the trajectory makes it where you don't get here. And so it's tricky because it's slightly wrong. And so the enemy is successfully doing it. He's getting us slightly off track. And there were a variety of things that God showed me, specifically busyness, or just kind of, remember in school how teachers they'd give you work that was really important, work that was pertinent, and they'd give you busy work, which was work that was just intended to keep you busy, probably to keep you out of their hair, frankly, right? And so they would just give you work that was a little bit of a waste of time. It was just busy work. It kind of felt like that's what was happening with a lot of us. We may feel like we're working. Oh, see, we're being productive. We're doing something good, but it's just busy work. It's not the work God has called you to. It's not exactly where you're supposed to be. It's just kind of left or right of where you're supposed to be. So it can be hard to tell because it seems kind of right. But if we're discerning, if we'll be still, if we'll listen to the Lord, we'll know. We'll know. Because in the dream, every time it was like, oh, I really like this house. Ooh, I really like that. I really like that. I really want this house. This would be such a great house for me. But I just can slightly tell this isn't the house for me. And so it's through discernment and through some stillness, which I fully acknowledge I'm terrible at. I don't like to sit still. I have a little ADD. I have a lot of energy naturally, and I hate sitting still, and I hate being quiet. I don't like quiet and still, except for like first thing in the morning for a little while. When I first wake up, for just a few minutes, I like to just sit still and drink my coffee. So it's hard for me. I have to really force myself to stop, be still, listen, press in for that discernment that helps us when it's just slightly wrong. So it's kind of a prophetic exhortation, encouragement, correction type of word here of we have to be careful to pay attention to the slight difference. And it's really through asking God to give us discernment and wisdom, pressing in and taking the time to listen to those gut feelings that God gives us that we'll know when we're slightly off track. Now, how do we know where we are supposed to be, what track we're supposed to be on? Well, what prophecies have been spoken over you? If you're someone who operates in that world, has anyone given prophetic words to you, spoken over you? What were they? Are you on the track that will lead you to fulfilling those prophetic words? That's one way we can figure out if we're where we're supposed to be. Two, we can figure out like what dreams were put in our hearts as a kid. I think a lot of times, if I look back to childhood and to things that were dreams that were in my heart, or when I used to play and play make-believe, what I would play make-believe with, that's really, those are clues in that. Like those are things that were seeds that God put in us when we were very young. And when we were young, often we're less inhibited, right? We're more free to just really go with what is really in our hearts instead of what we think other people want or whatever. So sometimes there's, childhood things you can look back at. Also just through prayer, through listening to the Lord, Lord, what do you have for me? What do you want from me? Through getting wise counsel from other people, we can get help, because sometimes people can see stuff in us that we can't see in ourselves. And sometimes someone else will be able to say, hey, I really see you doing this, or I really feel like you have this gifting and would be good at this. And they can call things out of us. And pay attention to your dreams, pay attention to your skill sets, your sphere of influence. What has God given you? What's in your hand already that you can work with? And then it'll grow as you start working with what's already in your hand, you get more. So those are some ways you can figure out if you're where you're supposed to be, if you're on that track, going straight up to the place, the thing God has for you, the calling on your life. So those are some ways. And, sometimes in order to reach where he's calling us to move into the house we're actually supposed to move into, instead of the ones that are kind of like where we're supposed to be, we have to give some things up. Sometimes it's like, you know what? If I keep on with this habit, I am not going to get to where I'm supposed to be. Or sometimes it's the opposite. If I don't form this new habit, I'm not going to get to where I'm supposed to be. If I don't develop this discipline, if I don't implement this into my life, I'm not going to get to where I'm supposed to be. So sometimes we have to evaluate, where are we supposed to be? What's the calling on our life? And then we have to evaluate, is there any obstacle that I am allowing to be in my life that needs to be removed in order for me to be who God has called me to be? Or is there anything that's not in my life that should be in my life that I need to start implementing? So I want to show you a video of RFK Jr. talking about that kind of thing for his life. He was a heroin addict, and he talks about getting sober and how, as he got sober, because that was something he needed to remove from his life, right? He needed to remove heroin from his life in order to become who God has called him to be. And so as he removed heroin, he talked about the God things that he began seeing and experiencing, and how a book that he had read had kind of led him to that. So I'm going to show you this little clip and we'll go from there. RFK, here you go.
This book by Carl Jung called Synchronicity, and I can't tell you where I got the book. It was just sitting on a table, and I picked it up because it was an album by the Police out at that time. It was also called Synchronicity, and I didn't know what the word was. Synchronicity means a coincidence. It's this thing that happens to all of us, like you're talking about somebody that you haven't thought about for 20 years, and the phone rings, and it's that guy on the phone, right? Mm-hmm. And there are these little incidences that defy the laws of percentages and chance. And Jung, I wouldn't recommend anybody read Synchronicity, but the book, his biography, which is called Dreams, Remembrances, and Something Else, is riveting. And Jung had these kind of experiences all his life. Jung was a contemporary of Freud's, and Freud was his mentor. But he broke with Freud because Freud was an atheist. And Jung's approach to psychiatry was deeply spiritual. And in fact, he really crafted the 12-step programs. He corresponded with Bill Wilson, and he treated Bill Wilson's best friend, a guy called Roland Hazard. Bill Wilson was the founder of AA. And he said to Roland Hazard said to him at one point, Roland Hazard was this millionaire from Boston who Jung treated, and he treated him a number of times, and every time he would leave the sanitarium, Jung ran the biggest sanitarium in Europe, in Zurich. He would leave the sanitarium thinking that he was cured, not wanting to drink, and within days he'd be drinking again. And he'd come back to Jung, and at one point he says to Jung, "Give it to me straight. Is there any chance for somebody with my level of alcoholism?" And Jung says to him, "No. I'm giving it to you straight. No, you're hopeless." And Roland Hazard pushes him, and he says, "In history, has anybody with my level ever walked away from it?" And Jung said, "Yes, but only when they have a profound spiritual realignment." And Hazard had gone back and shared that story with another guy called Abbey and with Bill Wilson, and that sort of became, the basis. The 12 steps of that program are designed to induce a spiritual awakening, right? So
wow.
That's how it works, how it's supposed to work. So Jung says in this, he tells a story about he's sitting like up on the third floor of his hospital with a patient, and a female patient. The patient has had a dream that she's explained to Jung, and the central feature of that dream is a scarab beetle. The scarab beetle is a creature that is basically non-existent in Northern Europe. It's very common in the South and in Northern Africa, and it's a very potent and common symbol on the iconography of Egypt and the hieroglyphics on the obelisks and and the tombs and the pyramids, etc. But so while he's talking to this woman, and dreams are a big part of his approach to psychiatry, he's talking to this woman about a dream, and he's hearing this bing, bing, bing on the window behind him, and he doesn't want his attention to take his attention off the patient because, he wants her to feel like she's listening to him. But finally he gets exasperated and he swings around. He throws open the window and a scarab beetle flies in and lands in his palm. And he turns to the woman and he said, "Is this what you were dreaming about?" And he had these kind of incidences. If you read his biography, they happen repeatedly to him throughout his life. And each one, it changes the trajectory of his life in a little way. He tries to, and he believed that these were incidences where God breaks his own rules, all the rules of biology, of percentage, of chance, of arithmetic, and reaches in and touches on the shoulder in order to just say, "I'm here," or to say, "You should change your posture a little," or, "I'm here and I'm watching and I'm with you," or whatever.
Did you have a profound spiritual awakening?
Yeah, I did, but I'll tell you what, it wasn't like a white light experience, but it was transformative. It was kind of a poor man's spiritual awakening. I was out the day that I finished reading that book by Jung. I was out on a volleyball court. I was at a rehab still, and I was with some of the other patients, and we were playing volleyball, and somebody hit a volleyball. I just finished this book, Synchronicity, and somebody hit a volleyball, and it a very, very powerful hit, and it went way up, and then it came down, and it landed on the post, and it started bouncing up in this kind of errant flight. And I said out loud, so everybody heard me, I said, "That ball's going to get hit by a Mack truck." Now, I don't know why I said that, but I said it out loud, and 10 people heard me. The ball went up, and it landed on a chain link fence right on the top, and then it kind of tipped over the top, and on the other side, it ran down a driveway about 40 or 50 feet into the main thoroughfare. And a big 18-wheel diesel with the bulldog on the front comes by, and it pops it with a really resounding pop. And everybody there was looking at me and saying, "How did you do that?"
Oh man!
So I had just finished that book, and it was like God coming in and touching me, saying, "Yeah, this
reaffirming."
Yeah,
here I am.
So then, it just, I don't know, it put me in a different. It put me in a place where I could listen for the first time instead of arguing with it and fighting it, to just say, "Okay, I'm in good hands, and I can put down the oars and I can hoist the sails, and let God do the hard work, and me do the what I'm just supposed to do on a day-to-day basis."
Wow!
And if we're here. We're not here to build a big pile for ourselves, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. We're here to build character, which is eternal, which is forever, and is really the only thing ultimately that matters.
Okay, so I love that, right? I love how as we take steps, for him, it was getting sober from heroin. As we take the little steps towards what we think God is calling us to, we start seeing and experiencing God moments. In another interview, RFK said that he noticed as he got sober, he got luckier. And he joked and said, of course, it wasn't luck. It was God. It was as he removed an obstacle from his path that was preventing him from becoming who God wanted him to be, he started getting lucky. All of a sudden, saw God's activity all around him, started running into the right people and being at the right place at the right time. And so as we do our part to take steps to remove obstacles, to bring in new habits, to do whatever it is that we feel like we're called to do, we bite that elephant, or we eat that elephant one bite at a time, right? Just doing one little thing at a time that we feel like we're prompted to do by the Holy Spirit, that God's activity starts being evident. And we maybe before didn't see it at all. Because I've just found this to be so true, that as I take a step of obedience, usually a step that is very uncomfortable, because there's a lot of opposition to us becoming who God's called us to be, right? So the enemy opposes you taking action. So as you're in that place of not taking action, not doing what you're supposed to do, you're kind of comfortable, but you also don't really see God doing amazing things around you. But as you press past that oppression and those obstacles and take those uncomfortable steps, suddenly it's like, whoa, God's on my path. Whoa, look at that amazing thing that just happened. Wow. Look at how I said that ball is going to get hit by a Mack truck, and then it did. Whoa. That's the kind of stuff that starts happening. We start seeing God's activity as we take those steps. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, as we start, being obedient to not choose that path, don't buy that house that's slightly wrong, mostly right, but slightly wrong, as we persist to insist on only buying the house that God has for us, then we also start having favor. We start having doors open. We start seeing God's kind of wind, or feeling God's wind come to our back and just move us in a way that, as long as we're back in that comfortable space, or if we're just choosing to live in that house that's mostly right, but slightly not, we don't have that happen. We don't have God's wind coming at our back. We just can be comfortable, but we're not thriving. We're not seeing the supernatural. We're not getting the amazing things that God has for us, and they're worth it. They're worth it. So I'm going to show you another video of Lou Engle talking about how he was called to pray for Roe versus Wade to be overturned, which he did for decades before it actually happened. But here's a story of him being obedient and what the result was, and how God's wind came to his back. Take a look. Lou Engle.
Because of that, God sent us to Washington, D.C. to plant a house of prayer, stand in front of the Supreme Court. And he showed us how to break through. For 18 years, 5 days a week, we prayed a prayer. Jesus, I plead your blood over my sins and the sins of my nation. God, end abortion, send revival to America. 5 days a week, 18 years, taking communion and declaring the blood of Jesus speaks better than the blood of 62 million babies. And something broke 18 years later, and Roe is no more. Come on, give a shout to God. The blood has overcome. The blood has overcome. Come on. And when Roe v. Wade fell, and I know everyone is fighting this battle in different ways, our call was to actually stand in the courts of heaven and plead a better blood. In fact, before we went there 18 years ago, now 20 years ago, before we went there, I sent a team. We were 30 days in front of the Supreme Court before the elections of a pro-life president. And a woman calls me from the Supreme Court and says, I hear you'd like a special tour of the Supreme Court. I said, yes, ma'am, thank you. Meet me on the side door. I meet her. She says to me this. Years ago I lived in Florida, and I got a prophecy from the Hammonds that one day I would be working in the Supreme Court, and when I was working there, Roe v. Wade would be overturned. I'm thinking, lady, who are you? Then she says, and I had a dream 2 weeks ago that Justice Ruth Ginsburg came to me and asked me to be her assistant. She said, last week, Justice Ginsburg asked me to be her assistant. I'm talking to the assistant of Justice Ginsburg. And I said, look, is there a basketball court in the Supreme Court building? I heard there is. She says, as a matter of fact, there is a basketball court exactly on top of where the Supreme Court holds its hearing, and they call it the highest court in the land. I said, take me to that court. I stood there 20 years ago and I declared pro-life presidents are going to bring pro-life judges, and Roe v. Wade will be ended. We're living in the days of the victory of the blood from the court of heaven.
Don't you love that? Don't you love how he did what he was supposed to do and God met him there? But he had to take a step. He had to overcome obstacles. He had to overcome oppression. He had to be obedient, and he had to refuse to settle into a house that wasn't the house that God had for him. And I want to do the same thing. And I'm not a creature of comfort. I like excitement. I kind of like change. I kind of like to, certainly I'd like to experience God's amazing activity around me. And when I'm not, I'm pretty miserable. Like if I'm not seeing God doing amazing things around me, it's like, what's wrong? And that's where I've been for a while. I've been in a place of really feeling a little stuck, a little too comfortable, a little apathetic. And when I heard RFK talk about getting sober from heroin caused him to get lucky, meaning he got to see God do amazing things all around him suddenly, I realized that I couldn't stay in this place any longer. This place of kind of lazy, apathetic, comfort, dullness. That's not who I'm created to be. And I've been here too long. And I think that's why I was having the dream, because it wasn't bad. I wasn't in a bad place. I wasn't doing bad things. And in fact, I was doing good things, but I wasn't really where I was supposed to be. So I'm changing that in my life. And I hope that you will too, because we don't want a house that's mostly right. We want a house where it is absolutely clear. This is the house God has for me. It's 100% right. It's the place I'm supposed to be. And I see his activity around me, and his wind is at my back, and I am becoming the person he's called me to be. So what do you need to do today? What's one thing that you need to do? What's one thing you need to bring into your life? What's one thing you need to take out of your life? Maybe what's one person you need to call? One action you need to take in order to move towards that perfectly right house that God has for you. I hope this has been a blessing to you today. I'm encouraged. I encouraged my own self just now. I hope you're encouraged. And I look forward to hearing from you and the step that you're taking and the house that God has for you and what you're called to. Send me a message, leave a comment in the comments down below, or send me an email and tell me, what is it that God has called you to do, and what are you doing? What's one step you're taking in order to get there? All right. God bless you, and know that you are loved. See you soon.
Thanks for watching The Rachel Hamm Show. If you found value in today's content, would you consider giving a gift? Any amount is appreciated, and the links to give are in the description box below this video. Or perhaps you'd like to buy one of Rachel's products so she can continue bringing content like this to you. All the links to purchase her products are in the description box below the video. To find out more about Rachel, you can go to her website, rachelhamm.com. That's RachelHamm.com. See you in the next episode of The Rachel Hamm Show.